Most main characters get a cheap cheat code, right? A legendary sword, unlimited mana, maybe a god-tier summon. But what if the only way you get stronger is to let your enemies brutally murder you, over and over again? Welcome to this explainer of the Manhwa Chronicle. This is a story literally written in blood, steel, and just an endless loop of slaughter. Meet Ankred. He's an average boy whose very first death changed absolutely everything.
So Ankred isn't your typical chosen one. Actually, he's a painfully average kid who just finds himself trapped in this endless loop on a really chaotic, gruesome battlefield. His whole reality? Waking up to the clanking of pots and pans, marching out into the thick fog of war, and, well, getting violently slaughtered. But here's the crazy catch. That brutal, agonizing death, it's his only pathway to progress. Every single time his life gets snuffed out, he gets a chance to start the day completely over.
Look, we've all felt outclassed at some point, haven't we? That creeping sense of imposter syndrome when you're facing someone with just overwhelming natural talent. Ankred trained under a retired mercenary in his village, literally swinging his sword thousands of times a day. He genuinely believed that hard work beats talent. But the real mercenaries? They just laughed right in his face. And then in his first actual skirmish, this gifted 12-year-old kid, 12 years old, sends Ankred's sword flying with just one effortless strike. His pride was absolutely shattered by someone half his age. But Ankred? No way. He didn't quit. Instead of giving up, his progression timeline turned into this absolute masterclass in obsession. He basically became a dark fantasy version of Rock Lee. His dedication to the basics was borderline insane. He swung his sword at these massive ancient trees so many times every single day that his iron blade would literally vibrate from the sheer velocity. From getting his pride shattered on day one to making iron literally hum by year one, his mindset was crystal clear. If he couldn't be the most naturally gifted warrior, he decided he'd just become the most experienced corpse the world has ever seen. Think about that for a second. That is the ultimate underdog mentality. Since he lacked that high natural talent of the prodigies around him, he decided to compensate by accumulating more lethal, visceral combat experience than any living human. Because frankly, he was doing a whole lot more dying than living. 3 years later, the real war kicks off, and his curse is really put to the test. Now, the mechanics of this grim time loop are brutally simple. Ankred doesn't get any magical stat boosts when he respawns. There's no glowing game interface saying, strength level up, nothing like that. Instead, he dies brutally on the battlefield. Then he enters the boatman's realm. From there, he retains the pure, physical muscle memory of the exact attack that killed him. And finally, he respawns back to that same morning, forced to just adapt. Can you imagine the psychological weight of that? The boatman's realm is this chilling, dark void that Ankred encounters every single time he's killed. While he's there, this ethereal blue boatman steers a wooden skiff across a dark lake, and he's constantly just urging Ankred to give up. The boatman tells him to accept his weakness, sink into despair, and board the boat for good. But Ankred refuses, every time. He takes the pain and he carries those bloody lessons right back to the land of the living. Just consider the number 20 for a second. It took Ankred 20 agonizing, throat-slitting, chest-piercing deaths on the exact same battlefield just to learn how to stand face-to-face with a single skilled soldier. 20 times he felt the cold steel end his life, all just to figure out how to counter one guy's thrust. This isn't your standard power fantasy, guys. It's a raw testament to sheer, unyielding grit and incredibly bloody trial and error. It is the ultimate blood-soaked version of trial and error. Back on the front lines, Ankred starts moving with this eerie, almost terrifying mechanical precision. He perfectly blocks a surprise arrow falling from the smoky sky. He instantly decapitates an enemy sneaking up from behind. Why? Because he has literally already died to these exact attacks. His brain and his muscles have perfectly memorized the exact trajectory of the steel that pierced him in his previous lives. But then he faces his most brutal hurdle, Commander Rem. Ankred gets absolutely crushed, over and over again. But as the darkness takes him in each loop, his brain marks the mistake. The huge lesson he learns here? Use your hearing, not your eyes, to trace the heavy axe. By blinding himself to all the visual chaos around him, he learns to sense killing intent and trace weapons purely by the sound waves cutting through the air. So just when Ankred thinks he's mastered the basics of survival, enter the legendary warrior Ragna. Ragna takes one look at Ankred's self-taught, desperate survival skills and goes, all of that has to go, everything except the stab and that beast technique. Ragna literally calls his basics complete garbage and flattens Ankrid in the mud daily. But Ankrid? He totally embraces it. He lets the master tear him down completely just so he can rebuild his fundamentals the right way.
And man, the sheer scale of his progression becomes terrifying. Check this out. While an average soldier learns at a normal pace and a gifted prodigy may be 10 times faster, Ankrid is evolving at 100 times the speed. Why? Because he's compressing centuries of trial and error training into mere days through pure mortality. He's playing the chaotic battlefield like a game of chess at hyperspeed, predicting every single move.
And this is exactly where his signature technique comes in, the heart of the beast. Now, this isn't magic. It's a brutal, psychological combat technique that he mastered through those endless deaths. Think of it as forcing your mind into the ultimate flow state. It completely dulls the innate human panic response, completely erasing the fear of dying. This allows Ankrid's heart to swell with power, letting him slip under lethal attacks with cold, unfeeling precision. It literally turns our ultimate underdog into a machine of slaughter. The contrast is just staggering. I mean, look at this. He went from being stiff and fearful, panicking at the sight of death, and totally blind to ambushes, to being loose, adaptive, and terrifyingly efficient. He now hears attacks from behind before they even happen, executing these hyper-fast mechanical evasions. He hunts deadly threats like the relentless Greyhog beasts, simply because he just does not fear them anymore. This whole evolution culminates in the slaughter of the Knoll Horde. A venomous horde of rabid, bipedal monsters from the Holy Devil's Date cult attacks a village, and Ankrid steps in entirely alone. The execution here is so visceral. 7 monsters thrust at him simultaneously, and he slips right under them, forcing the beasts to impale each other. He throws a glowing whistle dagger with lethal precision, blocks a heavy axe, and literally cuts a jumping beast right in half, leaving behind nothing but after images. It is wild. So how on earth does he pull off these hyper-fast maneuvers? Concentrate on a single point. That's his ultimate mastery, a concept taught to him by Ragna. By sharpening his senses to their absolute peak right in the microsecond before death, everything else just vanishes. The chaotic battlefield goes completely quiet. His sword moves exactly as he wills it, turning what used to be a desperate survival tactic into a flawless, unfeeling slaughter. But just as hope returns to the village, the massive Knoll Alpha leader steps forward, pointing its heavy, blood-soaked blade right at Ankrid's throat. The entire surviving horde charges at once. As Ankrid's vision blurs and the sheer numbers overwhelm him, that chilling reflection of the boatman appears in a pool of blood, and his voice echoes with this cold, quiet finality. This is your limit. Accept it and die. Which leaves us with this final, burning question. Will Ankrid find a loophole to slaughter the horde, or is this impossible loop going to break his sanity forever? You've seen the brutal mechanics, the endless deaths, and the evolution of a warrior forged in pure agony. Be sure to check out our next explainer to see if he shatters his limits, and subscribe to our explainer series, the Manhwa Chronicle, so you never miss the peak of action-shounen breakdowns. See you on the battlefield.